Pacific time. So I will, as presiding chair for this meeting, bring the meeting of July 12th of the Clatsop County Planning Commission to order. And I'd ask for a roll call of the Planning Commission members.
Commissioner Krashauer,
Present.
Commissioner Magyar,
Present.
Commissioner Pritchard,
Present.
Commissioner Linder,
Present.
Commissioner Powers,
Present.
Chair Farrar,
Present.
and Carrie Johnson is excused as he is out of the state. Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to just interject here before we adopt the agenda as kind of off the agenda. Just allow a minute or two for each new Planning Commission member. We have 3 on board today. Just a minute or two to introduce yourself if you care to. There's no obligation, but in the past we've given that opportunity. So I'll start with Jeremy Linder, if you have anything you'd like to say.
Sure. Good morning. Thanks for having me here. I've been a resident of Astoria pretty much all my life. I'm about 40 years now. We have a small business that my family operates in Astoria, and then we also have a cattle ranch out in Youngs River, and looking forward to being a part of this group.
Very good. Thank you. Welcome to the commission. And I'll take Katie Pritchard next. Would you care to say anything?
Hello, well, I'm Katie Pritchard. I, similar to Jeremy, have lived here my whole life, served in the military at Camp Riley for 20 years, and then recently retired and commercial fish, as well as, so I like Commissioner Johnson, I'll be coming and going sometimes, but may have a little more access. But yeah, so I'm excited to serve, and that's about it.
Thank you very much, and welcome on to the commission.
Thank you.
And finally, we'll go to a returning member of great esteem, Mike Magyar, if you'd like to say something.
Sure. I'm Mike Magyar. I live on Youngs River Road, south of Tucker Creek, and I'm a land surveyor, a sole proprietor, business owner. My wife's a school teacher. I've lived in Clatsop County for 7 years, so I don't really have a huge history here, but I've talked to a lot of people, specifically around land use situations. So I kind of have a pretty good feel for what a lot of people are thinking, at least people who have land. So I like this kind of stuff. I think it's fun. I took a break. I've got a 15-month-old daughter, and she's really keeping me busy. So squeezing time in to do this and serve the community, and fall asleep listening to Jeremy's cows is really what I do. All right, talk to you all later.
Well, thank you very much, all 3, and again, welcome to the commission. So at this point, we'll take a look at the agenda. I assume everybody's had a look at the packet, and I'd be looking for a motion to adopt the agenda or to adjust it in some way. Would somebody care to make that motion?
I make a motion to adopt the agenda as it is.
Is there a second to that motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda as presented. So all those in favor say aye or raise your hand so I can see you.
Aye.
Aye. Yes, that's unanimous. And by the way, just I'm new to being chair. This is the first time I've chaired this commission, so I'm going to stumble and stammer and all that kind of stuff. If you want to get my attention, either raise your hand on the screen where you've got a video showing, and I'll try to see your hand, or you can raise the little symbol hand by using the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. I think most of you are aware of Zoom meetings and how they work. The other thing is, if all else fails, just blurt out, because it's sometimes hard to know who's got something they're trying to get a question in, and we want to hear from everybody. That's the main idea, but we want to do it in an orderly way and in a routine way where the public kind of understands what's going on. So that's the general game plan. So at this point on the agenda, we typically have, and do this morning as well, a opportunity for business from the public, where any member from the public can give a brief presentation. We usually restrict that to no more than 3 minutes, and oftentimes can be done more quickly than that. And it can be on any land use planning issue other than those items that are on the agenda. So if it's on the agenda later, in this case, a quasi judicial hearing, you would reserve your comments until that time. So I will ask if there are any members of the public, or whether the Community Development Department has received any communications from the public that they would like put into the meeting record.
Yeah, staff has not received any communications.
Okay, and I don't see anybody clamoring to get to the podium here. So with that, we'll close the business from the public, and the next item on the agenda is minutes. And for those of you that haven't been on the commission for a little while, I'll just mention that we don't produce written minutes to the meetings at this time. We're using video recording, so there's voice and the visual video of the meeting in its entirety, and that's available on the county website. So the minutes are kind of moved to a more modern approach, and they're available for all past meetings. So this morning on the agenda, the big item, I guess, is a public hearing, and this is a quasi-judicial procedure, which requires a special format and special statements to open the meeting so that everybody understands the context here. This procedure is for an exception to the goal 11 of the comp plan, which has to do with facilities and facility boundaries, among other things, and to have text amendments made to the Clatsop County Comprehensive Plan, and also to the Clatsop Plains Community Plan, both which are being worked on as we speak, but there is a current comprehensive plan as well as a current community plan. And so that's what we're really putting, we're taking into consideration this morning. And the idea is to whether or not to extend the shoreline sanitary district's boundary to include one lot, which is here designated as Township 7 North, Range 10 West, Section 15, Tax Lot 00700. It's also known as 33777 Felby Lake Lane in Warrington. And the applicants are Alan and Laurel Faves. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing that name correct, but you can correct me on that when you're given an opportunity to speak. And so I will open the hearing, and with the quasi-judicial proceedings, there are certain preliminaries that I will actually read off to make sure that we include them all and make this a legally properly held quasi judicial hearing. The first question is to each of the planning commissioners. Does any commissioner have ex parte contact to report that's relevant to this issue we're taking up today? If you do, just raise your hand or blurt out that you do, and I'll just remind the new members that there's nothing particularly incorrect about having ex parte communications or contact. It's just important to report it so everybody knows the full extent of our background on this issue. Next question is to the commissioners, again, the planning commissioners. And I ask, do any of you have a conflict of interest to report? And that could be either a actual conflict of interest or a potential conflict of interest. Seeing none, I think we're all pretty unbiased and ready to take up the issue. The final question is to everybody in the room and beyond as to the jurisdiction of this committee. Does anyone present wish to object to the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission to hear this matter at this time? And again, I see none, so I think we can go forward, and I'll ask staff to present a report about this hearing.
Good morning, Planning Commissioners. This is Julia Decker, Planning Manager, Clatsop County Community Development. You're able to hear me, is that correct?
Yes, I'm hearing kind of an echoey sound, but maybe that's just my, I'm motelling it, so I may have poor connection here.
Okay, well, we've got some new members, and also the last time that the Planning Commission took up a goal exception has been about a decade ago. So I'm going to go back through and provide a little bit of background information, maybe a little more than what we normally do, but let's talk for a moment about, in general, exceptions to statewide land use planning goals. So goal 2 requires each local government in Oregon to have and follow a comprehensive land use plan and implementing regulations. For Clatsop County, that's our land use code, that's the law doc, the Land and Water Development and Use Code. Cities and counties must build their comp plans on the factual base and then follow their plan when making decisions and using appropriate zoning. City and counties must be consistent with each other. Special districts and state agency plans and programs must be coordinated with comprehensive plans, and all of them need to be consistent with statewide goals and policies. So the comprehensive plan must comply with requirements of each applicable statewide planning goal. The Land Conservation and Development Commission reviewed each city and county comprehensive plan for compliance with the goals. And when LCDC found that the plan as a whole was consistent with the goals, the commission acknowledged them. And this is back when we were first doing all of this. The commission acknowledged them or approved the plan. Once a plan is acknowledged, it replaces the statewide goals for the purposes of local land use decisions. So then we use our own comprehensive plan and our own zoning ordinance. Clatsop County's previous plan was acknowledged. That was the Land and Water Development and Use Ordinance back from 1980. So that was acknowledged, and for anyone who's been following along with the department for the last couple of years, you know that we are working on a new one, and it will be acknowledged too, because we're creating something that will be. The comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance are the guiding documents for local government land use decisions. They create predictable outcomes for people who live and operate businesses in the community, for development of homes, for stores, for industries, businesses of all sorts. Comprehensive plans also guide public development, which is where we're headed. So streets, municipal water, sewer, parks, conservation of natural resources. But sometimes the situations arise that don't fit neatly into the acknowledged plan, and comp plans are not engraved in stone. So eventually they need some changes, because as community needs change, goals and resources change, and comprehensive plans need to continue to apply with statewide land use goals. So we have a procedure that we're going to follow. So part 2 of goal 2 is that it provides local government a procedure to follow when taking an exception to one of the land use goals. A local government can take an exception to a goal when it finds that unique circumstances warrant a local override of the statewide goal to create a better outcome. And that brings us to goal 11 and today's business. Goal 11 is public facilities and services. These take a variety of forms and are most intensive in urban areas, inside city limits and urban growth boundaries, and they're less intensive in rural areas. So they include water and sewer services, police and fire protection, health services, recreation facilities, energy services, communications, telecommunications, all that good stuff. And public facilities should be in greater supply in areas that are planned for higher density, such as inside city limits. The county has 5 cities. Each of them are developed at a more intensive level than the outside areas. So outside an urban growth boundary, public facilities should not, as a matter of practice, be provided. But they are in some, to some degree or another. I mean, we have lots of water districts in the rural areas, and we also have some sanitary districts. So, for example, public sewer service is only allowed outside of an urban growth boundary to alleviate an existing health hazard, and public water service is only allowed if not used as justification to increase existing levels of allowed rural development. Examples of this would be areas zoned for rural residential use. In order to extend or expand sewer service outside an urban area, the county needs to take an exception to goal 11. And that exception needs to be consistent with statewide land use goals and must go through a post-acknowledgement plan amendment process, which everybody shortens and calls PAPA. And that's where we began today. The Planning Commission is the first to review this application. And after your commission makes its recommendation, the matter is going to go to the Board of Clatsop County Commissioners. Their first hearing will be on August 24th, for a first reading and hearing, and then on September 14th for a second and final reading and probable adoption, assuming everything goes as anticipated. There's a work session on the matter scheduled before the board on the 27th of this month, and that's just to introduce the topic to them, kind of the way I just did just now. Along the way, before we even got here, staff has notified DLCD staff of the proposal and has provided copies to them of everything that you see before you today. And just as an aside, and before we get into the staff report and findings, this application is to amend the county's Goal 11 text and Clatsop Plains Community Plan. Not the new ones, but the existing ones, not the new ones you're all considering for the future. The application came in under the existing Goal 11, and due to timing, the county should be completed with this application before adoption of the newer version. That means staff will add any amendments made to the current version and wrap that into the new one. And there might be some behind the scenes administrative revisions to keep everything as seamless as possible, but staff has determined this is the best procedure to accomplish the revision. So with that, I'd like to move into the application unless anybody has any questions so far. Okay. So this is a quasi-judicial procedure, meaning it applies to one tax lot. It is not legislative. It doesn't apply to a whole lot of tax lots or to a whole class of tax lots, or to a whole zoning designation, for example. So this is an exception to Goal 11 and text amendments to the County Comprehensive Plan and Clatsop Plains Community Plan to extend the boundary of the Shoreline Sanitary District to include a single tax lot owned by Allen and Laurel Thieves. And for short, I'm just going to refer to it as tax lot 700. It is in the rural service area, single family residential. That is its zoning designation. That is also, it is got a comp plan designation for development. It's got a couple of other layers that apply to it. It shows statewide wetlands inventory. and also peripheral big game habitat. And it is on Felby Lake, and it is lakefront, and it is like that community wedged between Carnahan County Park and Felby Lake County Park. So it's an older community. It was, let's see, I think I provided some background information. This particular lot was created, it is a buildable lot of record created in 1955. And it was not as part of the Shoreline Sanitary District. The Shoreline Sanitary District was, I believe, 1969 or so, and maybe Mr. Glenn will probably be able to provide some more or better information if he wants to speak later. He's going to know much more about the sanitary district's background than I do. But I will say that Shoreline Estates is in an identified rural service area, and Clatsop County at the time that zoning ordinance was designated, and as the comprehensive plan that was designated, took the appropriate exceptions to goals 3 and 4. Goal 3 is agriculture, goal 4 is forestry, to allow sewer service into this area. And that's because this older subdivision has smaller lots, 7,500 to about 10,000 square feet is the range for them. And it's pretty hard to do that many lots on septic systems and not have an environmental problem. In fact, it's probably impossible. So sanitary district currently serves about 149 connections, and they have 6 buildable lots probably remaining to be filled out. They began operation as a wastewater treatment facility for the district in 1969. So this is before the zoning ordinance was adopted. They ran into some difficulty with the sanitary district plant beginning to age and fail. And so they had to do some work, basically needed to find a way to alleviate some problems with the fact that the sanitary district couldn't keep up with the plant, couldn't keep up the work, and needed either to be modified or to have the problem resolved in some way. They were running into fines, as I recall, with DEQ. So anyway, sanitary district was proactive, got on board. Voters approved the $2 million bond. They worked with the county and the city of Warrenton. And so the sanitary district now has a goal 11 exception to pipe the sewage to the city of Warrenton for treatment. And that was the best option that they identified at the time, and that's what they're using today. So the Thieves would like to take advantage of the very nearby sanitary district and not develop a septic system on their lot. So that's where we are right now. They are, let's see, Gail, could you bring up the map on about page 3 or page 5 of the, there it is. If you could bring up that map and maybe make it big enough so people can see it. And everybody can take a look at what we're talking about. So that light green sort of shading, that's the sanitary district's boundary currently. And there's a red outline, and it's the subject property, that's the Thieves property. Then you'll see a yellow outline, and that's the area that's outside the sanitary district boundary. That includes the Thieves property. Also 2 tax lots to the south of it, both of which are already developed with homes, and they're on septic systems. And then another lot that's on the other side of the road, also already developed, already with a septic system. So those lots, although they're zoned RSA SFR, rural service area, single family residential, they were not part of the subdivision, and so they're not part of the septic or part of the sanitary district. But when they took the exceptions in the area, you can see it's just a little pocket. So they designated everything with the same zoning and the same comprehensive plan designation. So let's move through that a little bit. Let's see. Took a look at the applicable criteria. And we can leave the map where it is because we'll just move through the applicable criteria fairly briefly, I think. So the Land and Water Development and Use Code, we had a couple of sections that we looked at. Type 4 procedure, public deliberations, and hearings. So a couple of sections in the law doc. In the comprehensive plan, we looked at goals 1, 2, 6, 10, and of course 11, the community plan, and then also an Oregon Administrative Rule 660-11-0060. And that is the one that guides us through the procedure to take the exception for goal 11. So for the law doc, all that we did basically was just say, here's what we're supposed to do. Yes, we're doing it. And so those criteria have been met. Same thing with the public deliberations. We are following the procedures we're supposed to. We look at the comprehensive plan, goals and policies. Goal 1 is citizen involvement. Again, we're following the appropriate procedures. We have hearings scheduled. It's a type 4 quasi-judicial procedure. We're doing what we're supposed to be doing. So we are meeting the goal 1 policies. Goal 2, land use planning development. This is the comprehensive plan designation for this particular tax lot. And so we have a definition for rural service area. The county has designated 4 areas as rural service areas, including Felby Lake. This is Felby Lake. Glenwood Mobile Home Park, the old Naval Hospital site, which is River Point today. Fishhawk Lake. Those are the 4. We don't have any RSAs anyplace else in the county. And so staff is looking at the fact that the shoreline district and the subject tax lot 700 are zoned appropriately and with comprehensive plan designation of development. And so it is consistent and with the applicable goal 2 policies. It is considered built upon and irrevocably committed to development, as you can see by the density of development in the area. Let's see. Goal 6, air, water, and land quality. That one, the policy that seemed most germane was that wastewater discharges from any development, when combined with existing discharges from existing developments, shall not result in violation of state or federal environmental quality statutes, rules, or standards. And of course, that's how we ended up with the goal exception in the first place for the sanitary district, because they were running into trouble. And we already have now 2 lakefront septic systems that are not part of the sanitary district. We're not aware of any issues, any health hazards at the time, but these lots are more densely developed than you would typically find for septic systems. Usually when we see septic systems today, you're going to find that the Department of Environmental Quality wants a minimum of 1 acre, and none of these are. So it's not that they can't be done. It's not that you can't put a septic system on less than 1 acre, but it's not optimal. And we'll look at wetlands on this property in just a moment. So staff analysis was that the Shoreline Sanitary District and Shoreline Estate Subdivision, which is immediately adjacent to 700 and in the same comp plan designation, were approved for goal 11 exceptions and text amendments to allow a relatively densely developed neighborhood to avoid pollution to Felby Lake and the nearby Skipanon River, and to connect the city of Warrenton once the district's own system began to fail. And we talked for a moment or two about potential for environmental damage. We're not aware of any at this time, but we prefer not to. It's better to be proactive. We would prefer not to see any. And so found the proposed text amendments and goal exception to allow connection of a lakefront single-family dwelling to a sanitary district that is immediately available and in the same zoning and comprehensive plan designations are consistent with the applicable Goal 6 policies. Goal 10, which is population and housing, had a couple of things that were germane. Most importantly, I thought under population policies is number 4, utilize current vacant land found between developments or within committed land. This is most assuredly a committed land. Under housing policies, number 1, Clatsop County shall encourage residential development only in those areas where necessary public facilities and services can be provided and where conflicts with forest and agricultural uses are minimized. And we don't have any conflicts with resource lands. There is a 50-foot setback to the lake and wetland zone that is the lake, but we don't have any agricultural lands right there. We don't have any forestry lands right there. We have development lands right there. And so the text amendments are considered to be consistent with goal 10. Goal 11, this is our meat and potatoes. We have some regulations that talk about outside urbanizable areas to support the provision of needed public facilities for rural areas at levels appropriate for rural densities, and to discourage the development of inappropriate public facilities on resource lands, which would result in pressure for conversion to a more intense use. Also, wastewater disposal. Clatsop County considers sewer services only appropriate for urbanizable lands and rural service areas. There's that term again, rural service area. The intensity of land use facilitated by provisions of sewer is not appropriate for rural areas. This isn't a rural area, it's a rural service area. Clatsop County may permit the creation or extension of services outside UGBs and RSAs in the event of a health hazard or water pollution identified by DEQ. Well, we don't have a current problem, but we could. We don't know. We haven't seen anything where anybody's done any water sampling on that lakefront at this time. And certainly we have a sewer system now feeding into the city of Warrenton rather than into its plant. In order to alleviate a water quality issue identified by DEQ, the Shoreline Sanitary District of Felby Lake shall be allowed to extend a sewer pipe connection to the city of Warrenton. No connection shall be allowed outside the rural service area or city of Warrenton urban growth boundary unless such connections are authorized in accordance with the requirements of Oregon Revised Statute 660-1160. And that's where we are today, is taking that authorization and that exception. So the staff finding here was, again, that the text amendments are consistent with the applicable goals and policies of Goal 11. It's in the appropriate designated rural service area and comprehensive plan development. Exceptions to Goal 3 and 4 were taken decades ago to alleviate a water pollution problem identified by DEQ. The neighborhood does not have any recognized ag or forestry values, and the neighborhood is developed to a nearly urban level. Tax lot 7,500 to 10,000 square feet, none are over an acre. And then the Clatsop Plains Community Plan, which has several things that were applicable, all of them having to do with the extension, I think, of the district's services to the city of Warrenton, the connection that was allowed there. So we have the policy. Minimum buildable lot size, 7,500 square feet in sewered areas and 15,000 square feet in unsewered areas. And the area known as Shoreline Estates shall be designated rural service area. Yeah. One thing I will say regarding this, and we'll get to momentarily here, the wetland delineation. The 7,500 square feet in a sewered lot is a really fairly minimal lot size. It's the smallest designation that we have in a rural outside city limits and urban growth boundaries. And it's on par with our rural communities, which have sewering. 15,000 square feet, double that size for septic systems. That's pretty old school. This lot with the wetlands that it has on it does not have 15,000 square feet. It's 16,000 square feet more or less, but by the time you figure in the wetland, the buildable area is actually just a little over 11,000 square feet. So it's really not quite as large as it should be by policy. So as you can see, we found the proposal to be consistent with general development policies for the rural service area 1 and 2, and also with sewer policies 1, 2, and 3. Development permits are required to construct single-family dwelling, and approval by the city of Warrenton is necessary in order to successfully obtain a development permit. We did send notice to the city of Warrenton. There's been a conversation apparently between Mr. Thieves, his contractor, John Glenn, the chairman of the sanitary district board, and the city of Warrenton staff. County staff hasn't been part of that conversation, but apparently the city staff is basically waiting for the county before they act. So anyway, proposed text amendments are consistent, according to staff, with the applicable policies of the community plans. Classic Plains Community Plan. I'm sorry, I need a drink of water. We have elements that we did not address because we did not find that they contained applicable policies. But I would like to go ahead and move now into the Oregon Administrative Rule, and this is the meat, the true meat. This is where we're taking the exception. We start with some definitions and some except as provided in sections. It tells us how the local government is supposed to respond. Shall not allow in certain specifics. They have some rules there. And then we move into sub 8. And this is where we really have to pay attention, and we really need every single one of these to work in order to take the goal exception. So local government may allow a residential use to connect an existing sewer line, provided conditions in subsections A through H of this section are met. So under A, we have a sewer services to a residential use located as defined, to a parcel as defined by a very specific section of code. It meets that. It is created specifically by a warranty deed in 1955, and it does meet the county's definition of parcel. Under B, a lot of parcels within a special district or sanitary authority sewer service boundary that existed on January 1st, 2005. Actually, we had several of them. Special districts, not the sanitary district, but special districts that that met the requirements for a special district. And so they are the Earhart Rural Fire Protection District, the Union Health District, and the Sunset Empire Park and Recreation District. All of these basically demonstrate that it's in an area that is irrevocably built and committed to development. So it already meets the, let's see, sewer service is to connect to a residential use located within a rural service area, and it has the definition, and yes, it absolutely does. D, the nearest connection point from the residential parcel or lot to be served is within 300 feet of a sewer line that existed at the location on January 1st, 2005. And I worked with John Glenn, the chairman of the sanitary district, and we located the connection point that is nearest. It is in front of tax lot 900, which is just like up and around the corner, and it is approximately, it's between 260 and 275 feet away, so it meets the within 300 feet threshold. Under E, it is determined by local government to be practical to connect to the sewer service to the residential, considering geographic features or other man-made constraints. So again, looking at it, just being reasonable, subject tax lot 700 is substandard in size for a lot served by a septic system, according to the county zoning code. Although it would be possible to place one on there, it's not optimal. The tax lot is part of a larger neighborhood, and all but 4 tax lots are served by the Shoreline Sanitary District. All of the lots are sized accordingly, mostly 7,500 to 10,000 square feet. Tax lot 700 is lakefront, and approximately a quarter of the parcel is wetland or submerged, and that's according to the Wetland Delineation. The constraints are of human design, but they're devised to protect natural resources. So in addition to being the property owner's preference, connection to the Shoreline Sanitary District is actually recommended by staff, especially given the immediate proximity of the sewer district to the tax lot. Under F, sewer service authorized by this section shall be available only to those parcels and lots specified in this section unless service to other lots or parcels is authorized. Tax lot 700 is the only one subject to this application. This is not being considered for any of the others. Let's see, G, we're almost there. The existing sewer line from where the nearest connection point is determined under subsection D above is not located within an urban growth boundary or unincorporated rural community. It is not. H, the connection of the sewer service shall not be relied upon to authorize a higher density of residential development. It is not. This lot is not divisible regardless. We cannot create a second lot here. So it will not increase the density in the area. We have not received any public or agency comments for this application. We've received nothing. I have findings and a recommendation for you, but if you don't mind, I'd like Gail to go ahead and forward down just a little bit to the application by the Thieves. And I'm not sure what page it's on, I'm sorry, but I'd like to go to the section of the application that has the wetland delineation, the last page of that. I'm almost there. No, that's not the page I wanted. There should be an exhibit that has the wetland delineation.
Yeah, this is the wetland delineation, Julia, so I'm not sure what you're looking for.
Is there a way for me to share the screen for a moment?
Yep.
And I have not done this in this particular. How do I do it?
So if you just click share screen down at the bottom.
Oh, there it is. There we go. There we go. So are you all able to see my screen at this point, which has the wetland delineation on it?
Yeah, we can see that.
Okay. So this is the wetland delineation, just and it's the nice color photo that shows what on the Thieves property is wetland and what is considered upland. And so as you can see, here is the wetland as it kind of curves around. It's called wetland A. And as you can see, it's probably connected to a wetland on the property below it. And we can see that it's a conduit straight through, draining straight through into the lake. So I wanted to make sure that everyone saw that. That's really what I found, or what staff found to be especially important regarding the way that this lot is configured. So other than that, I just wanted to have that in front of you. The other thing then, of course, is the actual text amendments themselves, and then the map that is being proposed. This is the draft that was sent out under separate cover. And so here in yellow is the Thieves property. The red dotted outline shows you the current configuration of the Shoreline Sanitary District, and then the black outline would be as amended by ordinance 22-06 as proposed. So, and I had spoken earlier about how the connection point was less than 300 feet away. The connection point is right here in front of tax lot 900. So it's just right there. So I'd like to take a look at the points that are in the amendments to the comprehensive plan goal 11 and also the community plan. How do I go about giving you the screen back? Stop share? Did I do it?
I did it.
Excellent. Can we go ahead and look at the proposed amendments? And I'll take a moment and see, are there any questions so far? Okay. So in red are the proposed amendments, and mostly what I'm doing, or what staff is proposing here, is to add this amendment that basically would say, here's, due to the proximity of Felby Lake on-site wetlands, appropriate existing RSA SFR zoning and comprehensive plan designation development, took exceptions to goals 3 and 4, and is documented in Classic County Comprehensive Plan Goal 2, which was adopted July 23rd, 1980. And the abutment of the Shoreline Sanitary District, Classic County has taken exception to Goal 11 to amend the comprehensive plan and Classic Plains Community Plan in accordance with OAR 660-11-60 to extend the boundary of the Shoreline Sanitary District. A map of the amended boundary is included with the community plan. And the map that I had showed you just moments ago is the one being proposed. And then down below, we have the rural service area designation, and below that, the goal 11. All that's here is adding some language and then doing some renumbering. And so that is the full extent of the amendments being proposed. And then there is a recommendation from staff to do this, and that's, oops, there we go. This is the intergovernmental agreement that Gail's got in front of you now. This is from 2012, and this is the one that extended the ability to connect to the city of Warrenton. Other exhibits, including the correspondence, mostly between Mr. Thieves and staff, or Mr. Glenn and staff. And the public notice. And the property is posted. Okay. And that's basically all of it. Are there any questions? I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
So this is an opportunity for any of the planning commissioners to ask questions of staff. We'll, after taking public testimony, we'll open it up to general discussion between the commission members. So this would just be specific questions to the presentation given. It looks like there aren't any. There was a little bit of background noise, and I know a few of us were having a little bit of difficulty at times hearing, but I think the packet you put together is very complete and succinct, and it covered a lot of ground. It's a rather interesting short packet that packs a lot of interesting planning commission duties and responsibilities and things in it. So it's a good opening issue to take up by the new commissioners to see. I recognize Commissioner Magyar as having a question.
Yes, this is in reference to the awesome wetland exhibit. I think that's a good one. And just to, this is my read. So, and maybe John Glenn could comment on this as well. But for the staff, my take is, and of course the report was excellent, because that wetland area, the shape of that feature, what we're basically saying is it's healthier for the lake to not have septic and to include this lot in the sanitary in the district, so that because that wetland is there and the proximity of the septic would just maybe leach into the lake. Is that ultimately what we're trying to prevent here?
that's certainly an argument in favor of the goal exception. We definitely see because there's a larger wetland. I mean, you don't see it, it's not mapped on the south side of that property line, but there's a larger area there, and it is, it is a drainage. It's a natural drainage. The owners of the property would prefer to leave that section alone. They like it, but they can talk to you more about that. The idea, though, is it's always a win-win not to have a septic system in close proximity to a body of water. Just that simple.
Any other questions from commissioners to staff about the report? Okay, well, it looks like there's no further questions. There will be more discussion and time for comment from everyone. So this is kind of a special little piece here. If just something in the presentation wasn't clear to commissioners, they can resolve it before we open the public testimony part. So with no further questions, I thank Julia Decker for a fine presentation. And again, the packet was very concise, and I appreciated the work that went into it. So at this point, we're going to open up the hearing to public testimony, and any members of the public are invited to comment or raise an issue on this planned amendment to the comp plan and the community plan. There's legal wording that we're supposed to make certain everybody understands that a failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the board, and that's the Board of County Commissioners, based on that issue. So that's a little legalese in there. I don't think there are any members of the public, but if there are, they can identify themselves, and all speakers from the floor, which in this case is a Zoom platform, are to provide their name and address before speaking. That's to have it in the record. If you're appearing in a representative capacity, you should identify whom you represent, and then limit your comments hopefully to 3 minutes or so, to give everybody an opportunity to present. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward the criteria in the plan or the staff report or land use regulation which the person believes to apply to this decision. Are there any public comments? You're a special case,
Okay.
Mr. Phipps. I don't see any general public out there. I'm disappointed there are not groves of people here to join in, but that's often the way it is. So now we take a special moment, or not moment, but we take a special time for the applicant. Mr. Alan Thieves, you have the floor to
Okay.
say anything you wish about it.
I hope you can hear me. I'm Alan Fevas. I live at 304 Northwest Furnish in Pendleton, Oregon. The other part that wasn't exactly emphasized with regard to the wetland would be that in order to provide space for a residence, they're offset, the septic system. You'd almost have to get a permit from the Corps of Engineers to fill part of the wetland, and connecting to the sewer district will probably not require that place to be filled, and that's preferable. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Well, thank you for that comment, and I think that point's very important, and Staff alluded to it, but your discussion of it made it crystal clear, so I appreciate that. Do you have any further comments you'd like to make, Mr. Feedface?
Yeah, well, yeah,
I'm sorry, I've
Don't worry about that.
mispronounced your name.
I think it's all in the application. It's a fairly small lot as lot sizes go, and with the wetlands, it's important to be able to connect, and the connection is nearby, and we're adjacent to other people in the district, and I think it makes a lot of sense just to move the boundary one little bit and get us connected.
Okay, well, thank you very much for those important observations and comments. And you will have an opportunity after any other comments to make a rebuttal if you feel it's necessary. At this point, I'll ask if there are any comments from proponents, and since there weren't any members of the public present, we're talking about people not on the commission, if they're proponents. So I see nobody raising their hand or raising their voice to say. And now we'll ask if there's any comments from the public for opponents to the application. And again, I see none. And therefore, a rebuttal seems probably unnecessary. I see John Glenn as his hand up. Would you like to make comments, sir? Please unmute yourself.
There you go. I guess I missed the proponents part. I just wanted to throw in my 2 cents from the Shoreline Sanitary District. My name is John Glenn. I'm the senior member on the board of directors for Shoreline Sanitary District. Owned property here since 1976 on Hawkins Road, and strongly support Mr. Fee's application for joining the district. We not only have the capacity, but I think it is not only good for him, I think it is good for the neighborhood and the environment out here. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Felby Lake. We moved here in 1976. The weather station in Astoria used to give the weather and temperatures in Astoria, Seaside, and the bogs. Well, the bogs was us. In fact, I went to the real estate agent and said, hey, how about getting that out of the weather? It's bad for property values. Anyway, it'll give you an idea. The water table is very high here, and I think it is definitely a good idea to have him on the system.
Thank you very much. It's very useful commentary there. At this point, I'll ask if there's any public agent. Well, you're a public agency, so that was you. You actually spoke at the correct time, Mr. Glenn. Public agency response has been given, and I'll ask Ms. Decker if she has any further comments or response to anything that's been said thus far.
I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay. So do any members of the planning commission have any further questions about the application? I see Commissioner Kraushaar raising his hand.
Not so much the application. I'm sorry, I had a very hard time hearing Julia, and maybe she explained this, but I'm just curious why these small little weird section of land wasn't included originally in the with the rest of the district. It's kind of a little inlet there that's just wasn't included.
Well, I'm going to probably have you speak with Mr. Glenn because he probably has the background on that. But I will say that that little pocket right there was not part of the subdivision, and the Shoreline Estates subdivision, the sanitary district directly served it. So, Mr. Glenn, can you add to that?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much. The original landowner and broker, Mr. Willis Bucher, who developed Felby Lake in the 60s, only owned so much land. And that land is essentially what you see as the sewer district today. Originally, Felby Lake, people came out here to recreate, cool off from the heat of the city in Astoria. And the houses where Mr. Feeves is next to were lake houses at the time. And the house across the street in Felby Lake was not a house. It was the lake store. That's where you went to get your beer and soda and popcorn and then go to the beach, so to speak. And that has since subsequently been converted to a house. So Mr. Bucher only included in his sewer area the property he owned because he couldn't sell the lots because he couldn't put septic systems on them, both due to size and water table. I'm on one of the higher lots on Hawkins Road, and I can dig down 3 feet in my backyard and start hitting wet sand, and I can have water at 5 feet. So you get an idea. There's a house on the west side of Hawkins Road across from West Shore Drive that has an above ground system. They drilled, I don't know how many holes trying to find a place where they could put a septic system, and they never could. So the answer is the reason they're not in there is they didn't belong to him. I have approached over the years various owners of those properties, and I got the not only no, but hell no answer. I don't want to join the district. This was back when, if you asked to join the district, the board would meet and we'd basically vote you into the district and then come to the county and say, hey, we voted these people in. With the change of the laws over the years, we end up with this procedure that we're at now. So long answer to your short question of why aren't they in there? They just didn't belong to the original owner.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Magyar, do you have a comment?
Yes, I've got a question again. This is just regarding the wetland map. The setback for the lakefront. How does the county determine the 50-foot lakefront setback? Is that from the operating high water line as it's shown, or is it top of bank? Which is it that they use to determine that? And then do they then determine a setback from the wetland? And do they use the more restrictive setback, or do they just use the which setback do they choose to use?
The lake and wetland zone, which is corresponding pretty closely to the top of the bank, is the part with the 50-foot setback. So we would be going from the zone for the lake and wetland zone. And then the other setback that's going to apply in that area is going to be to the line of non-aquatic vegetation. But basically that's going to be a 35-foot setback. Probably did not look specifically at that because we're really not looking at the development today itself. We're looking instead at the comprehensive plan designation and the goal 11 exception. So when we get into looking at exactly where they might place a house, then we'll start looking more deeply at what I suspect is going to be a 35-foot setback to a line of non-aquatic vegetation as established by that wetlands map.
Okay, thank you. I recognize that. I didn't want to get into a debate about development. I just had a question. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just say here, I'm one to come up with a lot of questions too. And maybe that makes our meetings sometimes run a little long, but it's important to have discussion on these things. And so I encourage people to ask a question when they have one. And I've got a question at my door that I have to answer right now. I'm sorry. So I'll be back with you.
So, Julia, not to overstep and beat a dead horse here. Oh, wait, Chris is back. Never mind.
A life in a motel. Where were we? Go ahead, Mike, or Commissioner Magyar, if you have something you want to say.
No, I'm fine. I'll address it in a different context. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Any other commissioners have any questions or discussion they want to make around this application? If not, I'm going to close the public testimony, which I should have done before we went into our discussion period here, but I'm new to this, so it was a little out of order, but so the public testimony is closed, and also I think our commission discussion around it is also reaching an end, and so I would be looking for a motion to accept the staff findings. If you turn to page 15 of our packet, I think there's some wording in there suggesting that we accept the staff's recommendation for the exception to goal 11 and the amendments to the comprehensive plan and to the Clatsop Plains community plan. So if somebody would like to make a motion to either accept or to deny that, I'd like to hear it.
I'll make a motion that the Clatsop County Planning Commission recommend the Board of Clatsop County Commissioners amend the text of the comprehensive plan and Clatsop Plains community plan to expand the shoreline sanitary district to include Township 7 North, Range 10 West, Section 15, Tax Lot 700, and update any maps within the county's comprehensive plan and community plan that depict the sanitary district boundaries accordingly, with the draft map to be provided at the Planning Commission hearing, which should be added to the Clatsop Plains community plan.
Thank you.
And I'll second that motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that the Planning Commission recommend to the Board of Commissioners that the exception to goal 11 and amendments to the text of the comprehensive plan and the Clatsop Plains community plan be adopted, and also to include the revised map in that community plan. And this is relevant to expanding the shoreline sanitary district boundary to include a lot in Township 7 North, Range 10 West, Section 15, Tax Lot 00700, and update any maps within the county's plans. I would like to take a roll call vote for this. All those in favor of that motion, please, can we go through the members by name? Maybe
I
nobody
guess we could
wants.
just start. Katie Pritchard votes aye.
Okay.
I don't know if that's how you want to do it.
Okay, oh, sorry. I'll go ahead and do
Okay,
it. Clancy's probably busy, so let me just go
Okay.
down the roll here. So Chair Farrar,
I vote aye.
Commissioner Powers,
Aye.
Commissioner Magyar,
Aye.
Commissioner Krauscher,
Aye.
Commissioner Linder,
Aye.
Commissioner Pritchard.
Aye.
It's unanimous vote, 6-0.
Very good. And I appreciate the new commissioners' participation in this and putting up with my kind of learning what I'm supposed to be doing here. And congratulations to the applicant, Mr. Phoebes, and look forward to seeing your project go forward. All right, so we'll move on in the agenda then to the work session that's been prepared, some wording to the bylaws of our county commission, our planning commission, that is. And I hope everybody's had a chance to read those over and to consider the revisions. I don't know if you want to lead us through this a little bit, Director Henriksen, or whether we can just wing it.
Since we have some new members, I'd like to just give a little background and walk through the changes since the last time that we've looked at this document, if that's okay
Great.
with you.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's good.
All right, thank you. So back in June of last year, the board and the planning commission began going through the planning commission bylaws. And initially there were several significant changes that were proposed that included removing the scope of variance and conditional use review from the planning commission and moving that to the hearings officer, which is actually where it should be according to our land and water development and use code. So we made that change to bring the planning commission bylaws in compliance with our actual zoning code itself. One of the other changes that was proposed was to install term limits of 2 terms or up to 10 years, depending upon when and how an appointment was made. And each term, as you know, is a 4-year term. So 2 terms would be 8 years. And then there was that caveat that, for example, if somebody filled a partial term or something, that you could serve up to 10 years. There was language that was added that addressed when and how planning commission members could be removed, for example, for having 2 or more unexcused absences. We added some detail regarding the roles and responsibilities of the chair, the vice chair, and staff, established some basic level of conduct requirements or standards, put in some language that addressed the issue of bias. Bias, as you've learned if you've had a chance to complete your training, is a little bit different from conflict of interest because it's not necessarily a financial gain that you might benefit from by voting on something, but it's the status or the state of being so opinionated about something. Not that you can't have opinions, but being so far influenced by your opinion that you can't actually subjectively step back and look at the standards that may be required to make a decision about a particular case. And bias, even though there's no financial gain involved in it necessarily, can be a reason that a decision can be overturned or remanded back to the county by LUBA if it's demonstrated that bias has occurred in that decision-making process. So we wanted to make sure that it was clearly addressed in the Planning Commission bylaws. When we met after making these changes, the Planning Commission took a closer look at this at their September 2021 meeting, and they had a lot of questions at that time. Some of that related to whether or not the 2-term, 10-year term limit was a lifetime limit, or if there was the possibility for members to come back after they had taken time away from the Planning Commission once they reached that cap on their service. There was a request that language be added that no Board of Commissioner or staff could be allowed to serve on the Planning Commission. Speaking only for staff, honestly, we don't want to be on the Planning Commission, but we did add that language in. And then there was some confusion and lack of clarity regarding how absences were defined as either excused or unexcused. And then we also had some discussion about when the appointment date should begin. Currently, members are appointed for terms that begin July 1st, and then we have an election on January 1st for officers. And so part of the reason for that is our committees are all set up to operate that way with the appointments beginning July 1st, and that ties in with the beginning of our fiscal year as well. We didn't make any changes as staff to when we hold the election, and my recommendation for that, or my rationale for that, would be when you're a new member and you come in on July 1st, I don't think any of our new members today would really want to have an election of officers or be nominated as an officer on your very first meeting on your very first day at work. So I think having that 6-month period to kind of see how the Planning Commission operates and give you an idea of who the people are on the commission with you that you're serving with, I think just gives you that level of comfort and knowledge that you can use to then come in January and, you know, make nominations for an election for a chair and vice chair. So that's just the recommendation of staff. So following your September meeting back in 2021 and the questions that we just talked about, staff went through one more time and did make some additional revisions to address those. So in Article 2 under Scope of Authority, you'll see where we did, I'm trying to read my notes and look at my revisions here. We did make some clarifications about what the scope of the review is for the Planning Commission. So removing variances and conditional uses, subdivisions would still come forward to you. And then of course, cases like you had today, the quasi-judicial / legislative cases, amendments to our comprehensive plan, amendments to our zoning code. And of course, you are the Committee for Citizen Involvement. So we have put in our work plan this year, a project to try and kind of, I'll say beef it up, but to really make your role more prominent and to help you do more in terms of getting our citizen involvement in the land use process. So even though you won't be looking at variances and conditional uses, as our code says, go to the hearings officer, it's not that you're just going to be here to be a rubber stamp or won't have anything to do. We have a lot of important projects coming up this year. We have legislative updates. We have rural ADUs that we're going to be talking about. We have changes to our geologic hazard review process. So there's a lot that the Planning Commission will be working on. And so we don't need to take your time away from the variances and the conditional uses in order to keep you on track for that. So that was one of the changes we made. Then we also added to Article 3, Section B, that the two-term 10 years would be consecutive, and that after a break of 1 year, that a former Planning Commission member could reapply to be back on the Planning Commission. So we wanted to make that more clear in our language. And let's see, and then Section D of Article 3, where we talked about unexcused absences. And so an unexcused absence would be when you as a Planning Commission member don't show up for a meeting, but don't let staff know that you're going to be out of town or unavailable, or let the chair or the vice chair know. So if you're just a no-show, that will count as an unexcused absence. If you have more than 2 of those, then you would be removed from the Planning Commission for that. And then finally, we added a little bit more language as well to recognize the fact that emergencies happen and we have unforeseeable events in our lives, and that as those arise, we'll just review them on a case-by-case basis, because obviously there are some things you just cannot plan for in life. So those were the changes that staff has made since your September 2021 meeting, and nothing else has changed in there. And we wanted to have you take another look at this because on August 3rd, we do have a joint work session with the board. And this would be a good time for both the Planning Commission members and the board to identify anything else they want to change so that we can move forward, get this scheduled for a formal board hearing and get these approved and then have them become effective. So that is my presentation, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, well, I'll throw it open to any commissioner to raise their hand and ask a question or blurt their question out, if any. Commissioner Powers.
Yeah, hi. Back on, I think it was section under the removal of members. Recognize that there is we serve at the pleasure of the Board of Commissioners. Well, what I was concerned with or questioned on was can be removed without cause. I understand that. Does that mean the entire board in mass can be removed without cause, or is it individual selections?
It could be both.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else have a specific question they'd like to bring up? I have just a couple of points that I'd like to bring up, and maybe these are some things that we could talk about a little more at our August 3rd meeting, our joint meeting with the Board of Commissioners. First, under Article 2, Scope of Authority, I'll just say that conditional uses being removed from and variances, but mostly conditional uses being removed from Planning Commission meetings and activities or considerations. Generally, the conditional use ideas, they often can generate considerable public interest, and having them in a commission meeting allows the public to express themselves on it. So I just feel that taking the conditional uses out of the commission's duties is a little bit counter to the fourth item there, which is that the commission is to act as the county's committee for citizen involvement. And so I think it's a point worth considering. And as I say, since we're going to be meeting in a joint meeting on August 3rd, maybe that's just something each of us could. I see Director Henriksen wants to say something here. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the conditional uses, which under our code right now should be going to the hearings officer. So first of all, we are in violation of our code by taking conditional uses to the Planning Commission right now. Secondly, the hearings officer is the same public hearing process that you would hold as the Planning Commission. So there's still the opportunity for public comment. The applicant has the ability to speak, and that same process that you just scripted out for our previous case is the same type of process that the hearings officer goes through. So other than 7 of you hearing the same thing at the same time, there's one hearings officer, but otherwise the process is identical. So I don't think that the public is cheated out of any opportunity to participate.
Well, that is a point for debate, and I realize that as it stands now, it would be in conflict with our codes, but those are county codes that I guess I'm saying those should be changed to keep the conditional use. That's my position on it, and I know there's other views on it, and I think it's worthy of discussion. Just quickly, a couple other things. I think I was the one that brought up the point about when to elect officers versus when new commissioners begin their term, and that 6-month offset. I think it's a valid point that it's a great idea for people new to the commission to have 6 months to sit on there. And I'm going to take Commissioner Linder's question right now because I'm not sure what it refers to. So why don't...
Sorry, I just had a question when you were discussing the scope of authority and whether to move the variances or conditional uses to the hearings officer instead of the Planning Commission. And I wondered if you or maybe the county staff could educate me a little bit on the hearing process, who the hearing officer is, and if the applicant what their options are if the decision doesn't go their way? Can they still appeal it, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the process is completely the same. Our hearings officer is contracted. This person is an attorney. Currently, the contract that we have is with Cable Houston, which is a Portland land use firm and legal firm. And so the process is the same. The hearings officer will go through the same process. They'll hear the report from staff. They will have questions to staff if they have any. Then the applicant has the ability to present, and the hearings officer can ask questions to the applicant. And then there is it's open to the public for people to speak in favor and people to speak in opposition to. Then there's a final rebuttal period, and all the same requirements regarding ex parte communication, conflict of interest, bias apply to the hearings officer as well as it would if it was going to the planning commission. There was a second part. Oh, and then the appeals follows the same process. So when a hearings officer issues his or her decision, that can be appealed to the Board of Commissioners, and the Board of Commissioners decision can then be appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals at the state level.
Thank you.
Okay, does anybody else have a comment on that particular our duties section, Article 2? Okay, I'll just jump back to where I was with the election of officers versus when you start your term. And I think I was saying something about it. I think Director Henriksen makes a good point that having 6 months there is kind of nice for people to decide whether they want to take up a seat as an officer or who they may wish to see take the chair position and vice chair. The only thing I'd say is it might be useful if there was some way to elect a vice chair when both the chair and vice chair terms expire on June 30th, or as it happened this year, I was vice chair until the 30th of June and then became chair beginning July 1, but there's no vice chair right now. And the advantage of having a vice chair is they tend to be a little more primed, ready to sit in as chair if they're called upon to do that. There is a provision where without a vice chair, if the chair can't attend the meeting, then those present, the commissioners present, can just choose who they want the chair to be for that meeting. And that works too, but it just seems like if it goes on for 6 months, it's somewhat of an advantage just to have somebody that's ready to step in. It's a small point. It's just something to consider. The only other real quick thing I had sort of a question about was in Article 5, organizational procedures, and there's under meetings, item 3, the place and hour of any meeting may be changed by the chair of the planning commission if adequate notice can be given to the public and all interested parties. And it seems like we should really say what that adequate time period is. Is that 24 hours? Is that 7 days? Has there been any thought on that?
I'm not seeing the section you're looking at, Chair. So under Article 5, organizational procedures. Oh, I see. Okay, found it. Yeah, typically it's at least 24 hours.
Yeah, it's a small point, but it might be worth actually putting it in specifically, just so everybody knows.
Yeah, sometimes it might be less. So here's an example. So let's say beginning in August, we're going to be going back to hybrid meetings. But so we're in the Boyington, but if there is a water main break or the heat goes out or the whatever, and you can't use the building, we can't give 24 hours necessarily, but we can post a sign on the door that says this meeting has been moved to, please go here. So I don't want to lock us in to have to give 24 hours, only because there will be times when we have to move at the last minute, and then we wouldn't be able to hold a meeting.
Okay, well, that makes sense. That's a good answer to that. And I acknowledge that in general, we go out of our way to let people know in advance, well in advance of when meetings are and how to participate. So I applaud the Community Development Department for all their work on that. Just looking here quickly for anything else, and one question I had under Article 5 again, item, well, let's see, B is quorum, C voting, okay, under minutes, item E, down toward the bottom of that page, written minutes, it says written minutes need not be verbatim transcript, but give true reflection of the matters discussed at the meeting. I'm just wondering how we handle the citizen letters that may have been sent but not in time to make it into the packet, and whether those would be read at a meeting so that they would be part of the record through the video taping of it.
Yeah, so when this has happened previously, we have a cutoff date for when we need written comments to be included in the staff report in your agenda package. Comments that come in from the public or agencies following that, staff would present at the meeting, and those can be read verbatim into the record. They can also be posted along with the meeting video, just as attachments that would fall underneath that, which is what we've done with the comments we've received for short-term rentals as we've moved through that process. So there are a couple of different ways to do it.
Okay, that's very good. I'm a really strong proponent of citizen involvement and hearing everybody's thoughts on things. So that's why I ask a lot of these questions. So I'm done with my questions, and I'll ask again if any of the other commissioners have anything further they'd like to discuss about the possible revisions to the minutes, I mean to the bylaws. Looks like not. So we could move on to, I believe, the last item of the agenda, which is, well, not quite the last, but project status report. This is something for the new commissioners. I'll just mention this is something we do at each of our regular meetings. We have a few pages generally at the back of the packet that just shows the status of the current projects we've been working on, and it's helpful to keep track of things. So take it away, Director Henriksen, please.
Okay, thank you. So we have only a couple of projects that are cases not tied to our comp plan. One of those being the Arch Cape Deli, which is vested and is working its way through the building permit side of things at this point. A lot of our projects right now are tied to the comprehensive plan update. And you'll see at the bottom where we talk about the different community plans, it only shows that the Planning Commission has reviewed 2 of them, but that we know that there was a meeting on June 28th, and simply due to the timing of when I had to submit the report versus when your meeting was held, those aren't included in this month's report, but they will be reflected in your August report. And so really the table is just a way for the Planning Commission to keep tabs on the status of different cases and projects that it is working on or has reviewed, and that you know where things are at in the process. And so you have a little bit of closure in your professional land use planning lives here. And really with that, I'm just happy to answer any questions you might have.
doesn't look like we have any questions to take up. I'll just have a quick one. I believe as far as the community plans that were approved by the Planning Commission, all but the southwest coastal area have been approved.
Correct.
So there's a total of six community plans, and so 5 of them have been approved, and we'll see what happens with the other one. All right, that finishes the status report. Then we allow time for the director to make general report, which is kind of upcoming events and all kinds of good stuff.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, I did just want to welcome Katie and Jeremy and Mike to the Planning Commission, and we're happy to have you here. And Chris, I thought you did a really good job this morning, so good job. As far as upcoming items, we do have on August 3rd our 10 o'clock joint work session with the board. I think that that one is going to be completely virtual because they are keeping their daytime work sessions completely virtual at this point. And so we will be talking about the bylaws. If you do have another topic that you think we need to bring up with the board during our work session, please let me know. Our agenda item is going to be due next Wednesday. So we have just over a week if you need me to add anything to that agenda. And so the purpose of the joint work session, for those who haven't been through one before, is not for the board to come in and scold you. It's really a chance for the board and the Planning Commission to get to, figure out what they want to work on together and where the Planning Commission can be of assistance to the board in terms of land use cases that they need to have move forward, or amendments that we need to make to our code. And so it's a really good chance. We haven't done it until probably about a year or so ago, and I think it's a great idea. A lot of communities do it because you are really one of the primary boards or committees that supports the board. So you have a very important role to play. So I hope that you'll all be able to attend that meeting or work session as well. I feel like I had some other stuff to say. Yeah. On August 9th at your regular meeting in August, we will be going back to a hybrid meeting. And so we will be meeting primarily in person at the Boyington, but there will still be an option for virtual participation as well by both the public and board members in case you're out of town or unable to make it to the Boyington. But just to make you aware of that, if you do have concerns about that, please let me know. And we can talk about that in case we need to make different arrangements for you somehow. And then on August 9th, we're going to be bringing back the final drafts of all the comp plan goals and the 6 community plans. And I know that sounds like a lot. But everything up to this point, except for the Southwest Coastal Community Plan, has already been through at least one review with the Planning Commission. Now, that doesn't help the people who just joined today for your first meeting. But in your training packets, and if you haven't had your training yet, you'll get this when we do meet. There is a summary of the statewide planning goals. And so that is a very important thing to read through. It's only 3 pages, and it gives you a summary of what each goal is about. And when you get your packet, what I would recommend is don't focus so much on the narrative, but focus on the goals and policies that are at the end of each goal. Because those are the things that we use as the foundation for our zoning code. And those are the regulations and the standards that we're going to enforce. The narrative is all background material and it's a snapshot in time. So it's not imperative that have everything that you think you want in there. But the goals and policies and objectives are the main things that you need to focus on. And so that will cut your reading down considerably and really help you to focus on what we will be looking at and working towards over the next 20 years as we adopt this comp plan. You'll also notice that even though we have 18 goals that are part of our comp plan, goals 16, 17, and 18 are not included. And the reason for that is they are dealing with coastal shore, estuarine resources, coastal shorelands, and beaches and dunes. And these are a lot more technical and complex and need a lot more work to update. And so we pulled those out of the update process, and we are going to be hiring a consultant this fiscal year to work on those 3 goals. And so those will come back separately. So I just want to, I guess, reassure our new members and even our existing members that even though you're going to see a lot of material in your August agenda package, that it's not as bad as it looks at first glance. So I will stop there in case you have any questions for me. Okay, and then the other thing, short-term rentals, we will be going on August 3rd to the board for a work session to discuss caps in certain areas in the unincorporated parts of Clatsop County on short-term rentals, and probably some additional revisions to the operating standards. If you saw the Daily Historian today, there has been a petition filed to put a referendum on the ballot that would overturn Ordinance 2205. That was adopted by the board on June 22nd this year, and it added short-term rentals as a permitted use to 16 different zones within unincorporated Clatsop County. And so the referendum to repeal the effort would basically remove those 16 zones. It would still let short-term rentals operate in Arch Cape. And because of the way that the system is set up, everybody in Clatsop County will get to vote on this, including people in the incorporated areas, even though they're not affected by the ordinance. But every registered voter in the county will have a say on repealing that ordinance. So the group that filed has until it said August 10th in the paper, but I think it's actually August 19th to collect their signatures. They'll need 742 signatures in order to be placed on the ballot in November. And so that is moving forward. And then just to give you a highlight of some of the other things that we are working on and will be bringing back to you over the next 4 months or so. In September, we're going to do another work session with you about rural accessory dwelling units, rural ADUs. Ian, our senior planner, is working on revisions to our geologic hazard code to update that. It really has not been updated since 1979. So some changes coming there. And then we have a packet of legislative updates which are coming from the state legislative sessions. And so we've got several of those that we're going to be bringing in a work session to get your input on and direction. And then moving forward from there, we also probably have coming up possibly some amendments to the code related to psilocybin, which sounds kind of odd. How is it tied to land use? But with the Measure 109 that was passed in 2020 by the voters, the psilocybin service centers are going to be begin to be licensed starting January of 2023. And so unless the county chooses to opt out of that psilocybin measure, we will need to make some amendments to our code to address where the centers will be allowed in what zoning districts. And then heading into 2023, even though it's only July, but to just give you an idea of things that we're looking at, FEMA has a biological opinion that will be going into effect in a few years. And this is going to have some significant impacts on how we operate and what can be done in a floodplain. And so probably in the next few months, we will schedule a work session with you and also with the board to begin discussion on this, because we are going to have some very difficult decisions that we're going to have to make as a county as to how we are going to move forward under this biological opinion requirements. So that was a lot of information. Sorry, I just had to share all that. But anyway, if you have any questions, please let me know. And always, you are free to reach out to staff at any time with questions. So thank you.
Commissioner Powers.
Yeah, a couple questions, Director. One is just educational. So work sessions, are they considered public also, so the public can attend?
Public can always attend a work session. They just are not given an opportunity to participate in the discussion.
Okay, second question is, I recall back in 2009, 2010, the ODOT came out and did a survey of 101 from Astoria to, I believe, down to Cannon Beach. And they held several public meetings at Camp Riley, Seaside, and down in Cannon Beach, where they were developing a 20-year plan, I believe. Is it appropriate for us to ask them to come back and give us feedback on the status of that survey or the plan and where they are?
No, we can absolutely reach out to them and ask them. Doesn't mean that they'll show up, but we can certainly ask them.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah.
Any other commissioners have questions of our director? Just one quick one from me, going back to the actually to the project status thing. You may have said, but what is the timing of the contracted work for those last three comp plan goals?
I had an email from our land use council just this morning. Their deadline is today, and he did confirm that they will have everything to us by the end of the day today. Because the legal review has taken longer than we anticipated, we did have to move back our adoption date. We originally were going to be adopting this month in July with 2 public hearings before the board, but now that's been moved back to September. So our new adoption public hearing dates are September 14th and September 28th.
Okay, I'm glad you gave me that information again, but I was actually asking about the comp plan goals. I think you said 16, 17, 18. I thought one of those was the Willamette Valley one, but anyway, the 3 that we're contracting out for, is that a year-long process or is that 6 months? Do you have any idea of when we would actually see their work?
I would expect it's at least a year and probably closer to 2 years. And we haven't put the RFP out yet, so we're in the process of drafting that. Goal 15 is the Willamette Valley one. So.
Okay. Very good. A lot to take in this meeting. As I said before, it's a great introduction to the Planning Commission and some of the things we take up. And we have a wonderful community development department, and they do a great job and make our work a whole lot easier. But it's important for all of us to do what we can to stay educated on land use planning and how these meetings are to be run and all that kind of stuff. So I welcome anybody to, if you have a particular question, give me a call or email me, and without doing some backroom deal here, we can discuss one-on-one things about process, not about applications. It's better to stay away from that kind of stuff. But as far as if you're curious about particular process, I probably won't have your answer, but I'll know who to ask, and I'll give you a hint. Her initials are GH. Okay, so that brings us up to a point of adjournment, unless anybody has a good of the order kind of comment they'd like to make. Looks like you're all saturated. And again, I appreciate everybody's input today's meeting. I think it went really well. And thank you all very much. And we'll see you next month.
I just wanted to welcome the new members. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
meeting
you.
everybody and look forward to working with you.
Great. All right. Stay tuned.